Hello and welcome to Coppola Connections, where we intend to shake every branch of the Coppola family tree to find out, are they the greatest film family of all time? Last week we looked at Christopher Coppola's gonzo comic book adaptation, G-Men from Hell, and this week we are looking at a bona fide sporting classic. The first on the podcast to look at a film starring Talia Shire. It is the one and only 1976 Academy Award winner Rocky. However, before we step in the ring with this week's film, I have an amazing announcement to make, and that is Caged In and in part me are a part of the Breadcrumbs Collective. Less of a podcast network, more of a podcast family. It's like-minded individuals creating some weird and wonderful podcasts for you. The other podcasts you can find on that collective are a Drip Town, Lemony Main, Franchised, Tool Talk, Breadcrumbs, and the always amazing Pod Charles Cinecast, which brings me on to this week's guest, which is one of the co-hosts of that podcast, Jonathan Foster. As is the way now with this podcast, there is some bonus Nicolas Cage chat over on Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/cagedinpod. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, this is your spoiler warning, because we go through these films round by round, punch by punch, with every gory detail. If you'd like to find out if and where this film is streaming, you can do so with a handy document that is in the show notes right now. So there's only one thing left to do. That's to drink some raw eggs, beat your meat, and go the distance as we make some Coppola connections. On this episode, it's time to lace up your gloves and get ready to go blow for blow for one of the greatest underdog stories of all time, Rocky. Released in 1976, directed by John G. Alvidsen, starring Sylvester Stallone and Talia Shire. This film at the 1977 Academy Awards would go on up against Talia Shire's then husband's film, All the President's Men, to win 3 of the 10 Oscars it was nominated for. In my corner for this first round of the Rocky saga is cinema worker, podcast network boss, former Philly resident, host of both Pod Charles Cinecast, Breadcrumbs, and franchised podcasts, Jonathan Foster. How are you, sir?
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on, Petros. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's quite a strange one. It's nearly been like a year since we last spoke.
Yeah.
And it feels like not much has changed.
Nothing's
in
changed
the outside world.
No, that's not true. I feel like you've grown considerably since the last time I've been on this podcast, and I'm very proud of you, I should say. Yeah.
I thank you. I just meant like the wider world. Last time we spoke, it was, oh yeah, how's everything going with the cinema? It's like, well, the Prince Charles is closed. We're nearly a year later, and it's like, oh, anything fun coming up at the Prince Charles? The Prince Charles is closed, as is most things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be much to really update, is there? When it comes to the Prince Charles Cinema, anyway. We opened up since the last time that I talked to you twice, and we closed twice. So very fun. We had 4 weeks of trying to keep afloat. It was good though. People were really nice. They came out. We had some pretty packed audiences for what we could do in a very safe, socially distanced auditorium. So I want to thank all those people out there who came out. You're very nice, and thanks for doing that. Keep coming out when we reopen.
Amazing. So yeah, obviously today we're here to talk about Rocky and the wider Coppola family. Obviously you used to live in Philly. Is Rocky somewhat of like a hometown legend, even though he's a completely fictional character in Philly?
Yeah, I mean, Philly's like a crazy sports city. So I'm not from Philly. I'm from Virginia, and I moved up to Philly for a year when I was working in for a grocery chain. And the first thing I did when I got to Philly was go find the Rocky statue. So you're already getting sort of an idea of how important Rocky was to me as a kid growing up. But yeah, Philly, like, Rocky, like I said, Philly's like a very big sports place, so you have like so many sports teams, and they're like insane
Mhm.
about their sports. It's very fun. Like I don't even like care about any of those teams really, but I would like drive around listening to sports radio in Philly because they were insane and they were always like if like the Phillies, the baseball team or the Eagles or whatever, if they're doing really, really well, they're the best team on earth.
Mhm.
But if they suck and they're doing really bad, they're bums. They're all bums. And like that's all you hear. It's so fun. So Rocky was like, I think, very uh, yeah, he was definitely like a bit of a mythical creature there, like a figure. Unfortunately, the Rocky statue isn't on top of the steps at the museum anymore. Like you see in I think like what Rocky 4, Rocky
Yeah.
3, 4, when they installed the statue. So it's like around the corner from the place now, and that was kind of a shame because it took me a minute to find it. So I was just like looking around, I was like, "Where's the statue at?" And I think I had to like look on my phone, and I finally found it around the corner.
Did you do the steps? Did you do the run? Did you do the arms in the air or of like?
Uh, no, I was always alone. I was always alone. I do a lot of stupid things when I'm alone, but uh, yeah, I couldn't do that. They're pretty steep, It's
Mhm.
like you get the two montages really. The first time he tries it, and he's like winded when he gets up
Yeah.
there, and then the second time he's like he gets it, and you're just like, yeah, he's ready. He's ready to take on Apollo Creed. So yeah, I mean they're pretty steep, but you do see tons and tons of people doing it.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't have looked dumb if I tried it, but it's like it's always happening there.
The-
I would go there a lot because I really like that walk.
Mhm.
It's really cool. Like I don't know if you've seen it, you've seen the film. So when he turns and he looks and you see the city behind him,
Mhm.
like in front of him, there's like it's a long like parade basically. It's a really long street with all these flags from all over the world just like around. It's really cool, really
Amazing.
pretty. So really nice area of Philly.
What I was going to say about that second time he runs up them steps is it's really undercut in the sequel when like a load of kids do it, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like maybe it's not such a feat of like strength when it's like
Yeah.
a load of 10-year-olds who haven't been training for.
Yeah, but
for-
little kids are crazy like that though, like they have way more stamina than we do. I'm 31 now and I try to like
Mhm.
I walk a lot as well. That's the thing. I keep in well enough shape, but like if I'm gonna try to walk up those steps, it's you didn't tell me it was leg day, man. Oof. Oof. But yeah, they are steep.
Fantastic. Well, before we get too deep into talking about Rocky, when did you first become aware of the Coppola family as a kind of entity? When did you know they existed?
Yeah, I was trying to like rack my brain around this question because I've always been sort of like a weird nerd with film trivia like as a little kid. Like I don't know, like a bit of a sponge, someone will tell me like something like I don't know. I believe I talked to you about this before in the past with when I was on last time, and I was talking about Nic Cage and how I like learned he was connected to the Coppola family and all that stuff. I mean, it would just be like my mom or my dad telling me this sort of stuff when I was a little kid, and just always kind of knowing about these things. So I don't remember when I saw The Godfather, but I think I was aware when I was younger that like Talia Shire was like related. It was the sister of
Mhm.
Francis Ford Coppola. But yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. I can't even remember. Like it's I don't know. Sorry, that's a bad
Yeah,
answer.
no,
But
no, no. I remember like when I found out that then it's like when you find out the next link to the family because it is
yeah,
crazy. Like then you go, what? Jason Schwartzman's mum is Adrian, and then it's like your mind is blown
yeah,
once again, and then like
yeah,
there's like
yeah. That definitely blew my mind as well. Because I'm trying to remember like what the first Schwartzman film was that I saw. Because like I was really big into Rushmore, but I probably saw like I Heart Huckabees before that, and then I like retroactively found like some of his stuff with Wes Anderson, and yeah, it
yeah,
was just like whoa, that's Talia Shire. What? What?
yeah, because she's in I Heart Huckabees as well, right? Like
Yeah, she is.
that's
Yeah,
one of the few times they've worked together. A few as the Coppolas do. There is always a
yeah,
lot of cross-pollination,
Incestuous.
yeah,
Yeah.
in their films. And we'll get into some of that a bit later. So what was the first Talia Shire film you would have seen? Would it have been this film?
It definitely would have been one of the Rocky films. I don't remember what the first Rocky film was that I saw. I have like a very big like appreciation for like probably the worst couple of Rockies. Like not I mean like I'm saying that in a way that like critically speaking, like
Hmm.
but I think they're some of the best, like Rocky 4 and then like Rocky 3. So,
Yeah.
I that was like my gateway drug. And then like, as I don't know. I saw all of them as a kid. I don't remember what order and stuff, but it was definitely the Rocky movies. Talia Shire.
His name is Sylvester Stallone. He's the star of a new film called Rocky. He's been described as tough, handsome, talented, sexy, sensitive, dynamic, brilliant. He's been compared to Nicholson, De Niro, and Brando, but he is Rocky. He's the man who could be loved by only one woman because somehow she gets beneath the pain. He's every nobody who ever needed somebody.
Rocky, do you believe that America is the land of opportunity?
Yeah.
I'll break both your arms so they don't work for you.
He's every man who ever settled for something less.
What about my pride, Nick? At least you have pride. I ain't had no pride. I ain't had nothing. I want to get that. I want to get that.
Terrific. I mean, you could be a heartbreak. You walk down the street breaking hearts the way you're looking. Very sharp.
He's the man who never had a chance until now. Rocky. His whole life was 1,000,000 to 1 shot. His name is Sylvester Stallone, but you will always remember him as Rocky.
I remember like Rocky being a thing as a kid, just like kind of by osmosis, just like it's there. And obviously it's referenced in everything. Like obviously we talked about the steps, like that has kind of been lampooned so many times. You just kind of know
Definitely.
Adrian, like you know that. Like,
yo, Adrian.
without ever seeing the film, you just kind of know it. And there was a thing in me that like really just like ripped them all off, and I was a bit like, they're kind of just like they're dumb,
So easy to do, I think. Yeah.
dumb sports movies. And then like this is a big confession. I probably sat down and watched this properly for the first time later last year, and there's
Oh,
like
wow.
I and then like I literally went from like watching 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, just like engulfed them all. Then Balboa, then the Creed films. I'm like, I am a solid convert. Like
Yeah.
because and what they all do so well. You mentioned like 3 and 4. Is they're all like kind of products of their time, and
Yeah,
what
definitely.
what I love especially about this one is the fact that it's just a fucking like gritty 70s movie, right?
Yeah. When I was rewatching it the other night, I was thinking that as well. I was just like, I don't know. I've always like put like the Rocky films in like tiers.
Mhm.
Like, so like 3 and 4 are like, they're like the really, really fun, but like goofy ones. 5 shit. Balboa like is just like a very like, holy crap, I can't believe that was as good as it was.
Yeah.
Like, very underrated. If anyone doesn't want to give it a chance, definitely watch it. It's good. And then the Creed films are kind of like on that level as well. They're like really good. And then you have the first 2. So the second one I almost feel like is like, it's like really good, but it's not as good as the first one.
Mhm.
But the first one is like unbelievably one of the greatest films of all time. So you have like this weird thing about it where people, they see Rocky, they know, like you said, it's like osmosis. Rocky, it's like it's very parodied and all that, and it becomes almost to a detriment. But at the same time, the first film is like an Academy Award winner. It won Best Picture. It is a bona fide like legendary piece of cinema. And yeah, like when you watch it, it's just like this could be take Rocky out of it and just like throw Travis Bickle running around. You're watching Taxi Driver. You know what I mean? Like it's got that gritty 70s vibe. It's really dark and stuff. There's moments like we'll get into, I'm sure, but like just the relationship between Rocky and Adrian and stuff. It's like this could easily be a completely different movie if it was directed by like a Scorsese or like, I don't know, like Joe Spinell is in the film. It could just turn like really dark, but you know, it's like you kind of forget like how sweet Rocky is and stuff, but like, you know, and how just like he has to really drag Adrian out of her shell and stuff. And like at times you're just like, oh man, this is like borderline creepy. Like Rocky's a bit like he's a bit full on with his like obsession, but at the same time you're just like, oh well, he just really likes her. He's actually just really sweet. Really likes her. So yeah, it's weird. Like if you're watching it with the 70s like just glaze over it, it's so dark and gritty. And yeah, Philly looks really fucking cool. Yeah, the wet streets and just like the cold atmosphere of it and stuff, and just like, yeah, it's a good movie though. I think anyone who's not seen it or like doesn't want to give him a chance, go back and watch that first one, like for sure. Like,
well, it's got this aspect to it that it's not only just an Academy Award winner, it's also like the highest grossing movie of that year as well. So it kind of like straddles the line between like critically successful and kind of like the, do you know what I mean, the beard strokers can kind of get their fill.
Yeah.
But then obviously it got people into the cinema, and it's the thing, like it being like written off as a dumb sports movie. It's like that really in essence is a small part of the actual like screen time of this. Like it's a good like 40, like the first 45 minutes to an hour. It's just all character study of Rocky and Adrian and Burt Young's Paulie. And you just kind of like, you fall in love. And I think like if you didn't have any of that kind of humanistic stuff and like there's like light senses of humor to it and stuff like that. If you didn't have any of that, you wouldn't care by the time that the kind of sport stuff like comes in. And I guess it's that thing you were saying about like the Philly pride in like their team, stuff like that in sports. And it's like you can kind of use that in films. It's like, well, I'm not a boxing fan, but if a film like does something well, like portrays something well, I'm sold on it. Do you know what I mean? I will happily watch like a quote unquote boxing movie. And it's like, so what they say about documentaries, right? When they say that like the best kind of documentaries is to make you care about something you have no interest in. And it's kind of, I think that's similar with film. And obviously in this case they do it by, and let's take our hats off to the fact that like this is written by Sylvester Stallone.
Stallone, yeah, which is crazy because he was like such an unknown. Like he had really like literally taken his own Italian stallion name from like a kind of dodgy softcore porn career or something, like, you know, and like and then he's like he's a nobody who just like writes this script about something that he doesn't even fully know and understand, but it like is I guess a fan enough of and can utilize it to tell this like crazy story of an underdog. It's so impressive. Like I don't like, it's crazy because like it's almost like Sylvester Stallone is like the Rocky series as well, like where he gets sort of like, you know, fobbed off as just being this joke. Like, you know, it's like people like him, you know, they love the Rocky films, they love the Rambo films, but at the same time, they're gonna like just see him as being this like, you know, I don't know, one-dimensional action star. Like when he wrote this film and created this universe, and it's unbelievable. And he's actually directed a lot of films as well that like you just probably don't really think about. And you know, they're not all great, but it's like there's a lot more to Sylvester Stallone than just like being, oh, he's just like one of the faces of 80s action movies. You know, like there's a lot there. You know, like, and this story has a lot of soul, so it's like impressive.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know much about like the kind of like backstory to this, but United Artists really wanted like a Robert Redford type to play the character of Rocky, and they gave Sylvester Stallone like an out really early on and said to him, like, here's 200 grand, we'll buy the script off of you, and like, but we don't want you in it. And he said no. And this was at a point that like he had like $126 like to his name, and was like, no, if I'm gonna like, I want to be in this as well. And it was the producers, Ivan. Yeah, the producing partners. I will say their names eventually in this podcast. Don't worry, guys. But like, they kind of took a risk on him and said like, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it with you. And like, I think the budget originally for another actor, even still, was $2 million.
Yeah.
And then with Sylvester Stallone, it was $1 million.
Yeah.
And then these mad caveats that like any penny they went over that $1 million, the producers were like solely responsible to pay for that. And like they had like these mad clauses that at any moment they could kind of like, if Sylvester Stallone wasn't up to scratch, they could just sack him. And it's like, it's almost like the production of this film is just as like meaty and kind of like there's parallels to the story of Rocky himself. It's like, it's this guy who's so like talented and kind of really wants it. And I think at that time that is like, that is what Sylvester Stallone wanted. And John G. Alvidsen says in one of the commentaries that there's nothing better than like a starving actor. Like, and he said like, that's what Sylvester Stallone was. And he's like, he just kind of, he wanted to tell this story and was like ready to just like do anything. And like, I think one of the moments that really proves that in this film is the fact he downs 5 eggs. Like, that's a guy who really wants an acting career right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a documentary recently about Rocky. It was like the 40 years of Rocky or something documentary. It's only like 30 minutes. It's pretty good because it has like Sly Stallone basically just narrating over top of 8mm footage that John G. Alvidsen was shooting of the film.
Yeah.
In the background, just like test footage and stuff. And he was just sort of talking about all these sort of things and that he was doing and stuff. And I found it like pretty fascinating, just sort of how he just took so many chances. Like Sly Stallone, like just, he's like a nobody. He doesn't have like the credentials and stuff. And he's just like, oh, I like to, learn all my lines as quick as I can. And have a big, like repertoire lines in my head and stuff. And I just like go out and I just like, just go at it, try really hard to like remember what I have, but also try to ad lib and all that sort of stuff around it. And he's just like, I had no right to do that, but you have like Burgess Meredith there. He was just like, cool, let's do it, kid. And he's just like on board, and he's just like, yeah, that guy was such a pro because he like let me kind of get away with that. It's also like stories he was talking about, like how he was just not digging the choreography. The guy who was doing like trying to teach the boxing choreography, and he's just like this I don't want to do like one punch here, you punch me, I punch you, you punch me sort of thing. Like that's boring. Like that's not like what a boxing match is like. And he basically just pissed the guy off enough until the dude just quit. And then he just and then he was just like, all right, I guess I'm gonna have to train people how to, because like at the end of the movie you see his name is like the boxing coordinator or choreographer, and it's just like, what? And he even says, he's like, I didn't know anything about boxing. Like, so you see this like footage, they're just like literally testing out everything, like laying out all the like, the fights and stuff, him and Carl Weathers, and like he has his brother there like helping him, and all these other like boxers and stuff who are like just there to basically help train them, and shot all this footage that never got used, like matches that Rocky was supposed to be watching of Apollo Creed. And there's so much to this film. I feel like there's like probably like a plethora of like shots and scenes and all this sort of stuff that you would never see, like that would make this film even bigger and crazier.
Yeah.
It's also, what's kind of good about it is it's not that long, which is
well, it's kind of like, it's like 2 hours, and it's like, it doesn't overstay its welcome at all.
Yeah,
It's like,
definitely.
as I said earlier, like you need that kind of like that time with Rocky, and you need to see him and Adrian going ice skating. You kind of like you need the like moments in the bar and like exchanges with the local people, and that scene with like
Yeah.
walking Marie home, and it's like for me like that's a really pivotal moment in the film because like
Yeah.
you kind of see how like browbeaten he is, despite the fact he's kind of this like the film opens up, he wins a boxing match,
Yeah.
but still like people like
People
wouldn't,
just shit all over him.
yeah, they wouldn't spit on him if he was on fire,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
and there's great humor. There's like watching it again for like a second time today. There's a moment like when he's like, because he's just always like joking about with people as well. And there's that guy playing pool in the bar, and like he's like, "Oh, have you seen so and so?" And he's like, "Yeah, how's he doing?" He's like, "He's doing good. He's doing better than you." And like takes the pool ball away, and then there's just like a shot of the guy lining his ball back up, goes to take the
Yeah.
shot, and he chips the white ball off the table. And
Yeah,
it's like-
I remember seeing that. It's like, what?
Yeah, and it's like that. It's just this weird thing. It's like kitchen sink drama, but then it's got this like element of like oddball comedy to it. 'Cause, like,
Yeah, there's a lot of like
Rocky's-
weird lines. Like
Mm.
it's similar to like Jaws, you know, like those weird like sort of folksy sort of jokes that you hear in Jaws and stuff that are
Mm.
like kind of funny, but they're like also very strange. Like
It's just like Rocky, and it captures that thing of like being nervous on a date as well, because like every
Yeah.
time he's like speaking to Adrian, he's just kind of running his mouth in like the biggest load of bullshit you've
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
heard.
yeah.
He just kind of go like, "Hey, you know about birds? It looks like candy. These birds looks like candy, but they're flying around." It's like, what is he going on
What are you
about? But
talking
at the same time, it's like this guy's captivating. And it's like you just feel for him. But before we go on, do you mind giving us some of the plot for this film? Just in case people haven't seen it?
obviously we have this guy Rocky. He's literally a punching bag for everyone. Like you said, he starts the film. He's like he gets like it's like a really nasty fight in a club, you know, in a like a small club fight. You know, he's like just like he's a joke of a boxer to everyone really, and he just has to like, you know, just deal with so much shit from everyone. He's literally called Punchy Rocky, you know, so he's not like he's obviously like been fighting a lot. He's not the smartest guy. He's somehow managed to, you know, go his entire boxing career without breaking his nose. And, you know, that's going to come back at the end, of course. That's one of my favorite things when films do things like, oh, he's never broken his nose. And you're like, oh, he's going to get his nose broken. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Chekhov's nose.
but yeah, no. So yeah, he's a bit of a joke of a person around Philly as well. Everyone just kind of thinks he's a joke. They laugh at him behind his back. But he's so nice. He's such a nice person. He has this friend named Paulie whose sister is the woman that he loves named Adrian. She works at a pet shop, and he just goes in and tells bad jokes every day. And he's just like, he's in love with her. But meanwhile, there's Apollo Creed, the world heavyweight champion. He's the greatest boxer to ever live. He's the greatest showman to ever live. And he is about to have the biggest fight in Philadelphia for the turn of, I guess it's what, the 200th anniversary of America, 1976. So it was going to be the big New Year's Eve or New Year's fight, or New Year's Day, Philadelphia, where they signed the Declaration of Independence, biggest fight. And the guy that he's supposed to fight can't fight. So they can't find a replacement. And Apollo Creed gets the idea, hey, how about I fight a local person? And flips through a book, finds Rocky's name. The bomb.
I want to know what that book is. It's like a yellow pages for boxers, and he's kind of goes through. And it's like I don't know. It's like he's on Tinder for boxers.
Yeah.
It's like
Swipe left.
Italian Stallion. He gets wide-eyed, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's like the Italian Stallion. He's like, I could see it now.
It's like,
He's very like Carl Weathers. Like, let's
Oh,
talk
so
about Carl Weathers. He's amazing, and he said like when he went in for an audition, he was reading against Sylvester Stallone, and he wasn't sure how it was going because like Sylvester Stallone kind of looked at him, and then John G. Avildsen was sat on the sofa and then kind of started laughing a bit and got like kind of paranoid and just blurted out. He went, "Well, if you actually get me a proper actor to work against, like maybe I'll do better in the audition." And he said like Sylvester Stallone never mentioned that the whole time they worked together.
Oh wow.
Oh, and he had like blagged to them as well. They were like, "Can you box?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course I could box. Like
Yeah.
this is the '70s. Obviously, like you could say anything.
Yeah,
like
no one's-
nobody could actually check it up.
Yeah.
like.
But
So-
he
and then
was like a football linebacker though, right? So he had
Mhm.
like he had some very, very good credentials. Like he was a proper athlete. So I mean, he's amazing in this film. It's really
Yeah.
funny. I was watching it with my wife, and we were just kind of like sitting there, and I was just talking about how amazing Creed is because she's not seen all these films, and she was like, enjoying it, but was sort of like, oh, like is he actually that important though? And I was like, he is so important. Apollo Creed is so important. And she was like, yeah, but he's not really in this much. And I was like, he's not in this one much, like because they
Oh.
build up, and it's so perfect how they build him up. Because like
yeah.
you could have him in it a lot more, because he's a great character, and it wouldn't take away from the film. But I think it like adds so much for him to have this sort of like Rocky looks at him as like he is like the world champion, and he's like, I don't deserve, like he thinks when he's going in to like go, like he gets called in, and that's one of my favorite scenes in this film. Like he gets called in and by the promoter named Miles Juergens, played by Thayer David. He's in the office, and this guy tells him, he's like, listen, like, we've pulled your name, and you like the world champion wants to have a match with you. And he's like, oh, I'll be a good sparring partner. Like, he just
Yeah,
thinks
yeah.
it's a sparring thing. And he's like, no, Rocky, like you're gonna face him for the world heavyweight title. And his face, and the camera just like zooms in on him, and you just hear like Miles Juergens, this promoter, talking, but it starts getting all muffled, and it's like you're with Rocky in that moment. My skin starts to crawl in that like scene, because it's just the shot on his face, and he's just like, holy shit, like I'm going to face the world champion.
Yeah,
What?
Yeah. And then we kind of get a glimpse into like what the world think about him, because we
Yeah.
get that moment where he's on TV, and like it just feels like you get that sense, and by this point you're really on board with Rocky.
Yeah.
And like you just hate the fact that everyone's kind of like even like he's standing right there, they're kind of poking fun
Yeah.
at him,
Yeah.
and like it's just this kind of like he is just like this average guy, and like he does what like a lot of people would probably do if they're on TV, just goes, "Yo, Adrian, it's me, Rocky." And
Yeah.
this is to like kind of backtrack on it, there's like turns of phrases he uses in this that just like I absolutely love. It's that scene where he's walking Marie home, and he's like he refers to, well, Frank Stallone, his brother, and his mates who kind of hang about
Yeah.
on the corner,
It's
and he
singing,
just
yeah.
calls them the coconuts on the corner, and he kind of goes like, if you hang around with coconuts, you get coconuts. If you hang around with good people, you get good people. You hang around with yo-yos, you get yo-yos. And it's like it's that kind of stuff that's super endearing
Yeah.
about the character of Rocky, it's a real testament to, I guess, I would imagine a lot of that would be ad-libbed. I know that like a lot of the stuff is, I think you mentioned like between him and Burgess Meredith, like the kind of, I think, yeah, one of the key lines that was ad-libbed was when Burgess Meredith turns around to him and says like, "You thought of retiring?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Well, you should." And it's like that's great. But
Yeah.
what do you think of the character of Paulie in this? Like Burt Young's kind of portrayal of Paulie.
All right, so Burt Young is amazing in this film, but
Yes.
Paulie is he's so horrible. He's so horrible. He is such a like a little curmudgeon. Like he's like, it's funny, he's one of the only people throughout the film, for the most part, who is actually sort of on Rocky's side. Like, because he's friends with Rocky. Like, they don't really explain how they know each other and stuff, and you don't really need to know, I guess, but you kind of get the idea they've probably been like palling about for a while. But at the same time, he's like the first person to do what everyone starts to do after Rocky gets the match. But Paulie was doing it before. So all right, so Rocky, like I said, he's a punching bag. He's literally like the personification of like Rodney Dangerfield's like I get no respect routine, because no one respects him. And like everyone like just shits on him behind his back and stuff, like I said. And Paulie's like always there, and Paulie just like wants to be like, because Rocky's like he's he's the muscle for like basically like I guess a bookie or like a mob guy.
Yeah.
Like he's although he's kind of out of his element when he's doing that because he's too nice. He doesn't have like a mean streak. He wears these goofy glasses and stuff when he's taking these notes, and he has to take notes because he's like kind of dumb and he can't like remember things. So yeah, like, and Paulie wants in on that, and it's like Rocky's just sort of like, too nice and sort of like, no, you want to stay, do what you do, you got a good thing here, you're working in the meat and stuff. And yeah, so Paulie's like sort of friends with him, but like he's also trying to get stuff out of him. And it's the same thing where Rocky like makes it, he becomes the contender, and like everyone wants to ride off his coattails after that. And Paulie's been doing it the whole time, but Paulie's just like, he's so opportunistic and wants to like grind it up a gear, but it's almost like Rocky's just so nice that he doesn't even tell everyone to fuck off. Like, easily you could just be like, dude, you're just trying to like, ride my coattails, man, but fuck off, but he's too nice.
There's obviously like, well, it's probably not a theory, is just a point of view that Paulie is the real villain of the entire Rocky franchise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, everything bad that happens in this series, Paulie's responsible. Rocky loses, like, spoiler for the later ones, but he loses all of his money eventually, and Paulie's responsible for it. Bad investments. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, there's kind of two like key. Well, no, like Burt Young really gets to kind of like show what he can do in this film, because he gets some really juicy scenes with. I was gonna say meaty, but that feels a bit too on the nose. He gets like, and I think the first one where you kind of like your ears prick up and you pay attention to Burt Young is that scene. Well, just his introduction as well. Again, it kind of like goes back to that thing of comedy. You kind of see him like, you don't see his face for a while. He's combing his hair, and then he pulls on this little like fisherman's cap, and it's like, why have you wasted all that time? But the Thanksgiving scene.
Yeah,
like when he's invited Rocky over to take Adrian out for a date, and it's kind of bizarre because obviously like it's like, does he want the best for his sister, or does he just want her out of his hair? And he just like he explodes, right? And like kind of like, and I know Burt Young, like, to kind of get in character, he'd rub his hands with turpentine. And like he would get vermouth and like rub it on his neck, so he felt dirty and his hands hurt basically.
Oh man!
And he had this idea that Paulie would be arthritic because he's kind of like working in the meatpacking district. He's like he's always a bit like hunched over, isn't he? And he's kind of like, and it very much plays to the fact that he's like a beaten down man, and he is also like he works a physical job. But that scene on Thanksgiving where he grabs the turkey out of the oven, again, that was something that kind of Burt Young just did, like just like kind of like grab that turkey out there, and it's terrifying. Right?
Yeah, he's like, God, he's really good in that role, because he is like just horrible to Adrian and horrible to Rocky at times as well, and like he's just like you said, I guess he is like a beaten man, like, cause he's like a guy who, just he blames everyone for his misfortunes, and he's like not amounted to anything, or he's like doesn't respect where he's gotten to or whatever, and he thinks no one else is giving him any respect or love and stuff, and he's just like takes it out on everyone, and it's just like a horrible character, like he's just a horrible person. But yeah, I mean, like the way he treats Adrian is just horrific. Like I can't believe she put up with so much. But I think that's what's also beautiful about this film is just like, is it's such a coming out party for Adrian. Like it's
Mhm.
like literally seeing someone come out of their shell and stuff. I think like in that 40 years of Rocky documentary thing, like Sly Stallone talk like the image where she's basically there in her red suit and she brings Bupkis with her and stuff, and he
Yeah.
calls it basically like her Cinderella moment. That was like her, like everyone finally getting to see like how beautiful and stuff she is, and that was like what Rocky saw the whole time, and it's her coming out of her shell and stuff. It's like a really good story, like because Adrian's just as important to this film as Sly Stallone is to
Yeah.
being Rocky. She's like really she grounds him so much as well. Like it's a very important
Yeah.
character.
And obviously, by this point in Talia Shire's career, she would have already been an Oscar-nominated like actress for The Godfather Part Two,
Mm.
and then like now like this under her belt as well. But like she says something really interesting about Sly Stallone, that she called him like a very strange creature, but said like they had this like instant chemistry, like which that's like her first impression of him, like because he, I guess like nobody knew who he was when they were like introduced to him the first time, and one of the studio heads like mistook somebody else, assumed he was Sylvester Stallone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy. He's attractive. Yeah. We'll fund the film if he's going to be the star." And the kind of like the producers, Irvin, I will get it this time, trust me. Irvin, Irvin Winkler and Gene Kirkwood, and Robert Chartoff, like kind of went along with it. So like, well, we need to get this film made, and if they want to think that this blonde-eyed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy is Sylvester Stallone, we'll let them think that. But she described their relationship and like the kind of the way they work together, like ballet partners,
Yeah.
like dance partners, because they really do like complement each other.
Definitely,
Like,
yeah.
she's quite like the way she holds herself is quite like small and stuff like that, and then Rocky is like intimidating, but like I don't know, they're kind of like they perfectly fit together like
Yeah.
a yin and yang. They're
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like they're both again. This is a story of broken people, like obviously like striving for more, and like
Yeah.
we get that thing from that Thanksgiving scene that she's just had to basically put up with Paulie for her whole life.
Yeah, I
which is
mean,
kind of
basically just like says, "Oh, you want to be an old maid? You want to be an old maid?" Just because she's like what 30, like in 31. I can't remember what he says. It's like very young, very young.
yeah,
It's like she's an old maid because she's still living with you and putting up with your shit. So that's like when you get the great like turn for her, which is amazing. She just like turns on him finally, and she just confronts him and just like you know tells him like, "Hey, like." I do everything for you and I put up with your shit, all the time.
mhm,
I clean for you, I cook for you, I do your laundry. Who would do all that if I wasn't doing it? And like you're just, always putting this on me, but you just don't think about like, what I do for you and how important I am for you. And, it's such a like a great moment when she stands up for herself, and Paul like Burt Young's amazing in that scene as well, because he's like
yeah,
drunk and just like, you know, mentally just like beaten and just like upset and just crying, and like it's oh man, such an incredible like performance between those two as well. And like Rocky just being like what everyone would be in that situation, just kind of like glued in the background, just sort of like, oh
mhm.
shit, I'm witnessing, oh this ooh.
Yeah, but
Okay.
both times he's kind of privy to them two arguing. You just get that feeling of like being in the back of a car uh, when you're a kid, and like your friend's parents are having a go at them,
Yeah.
and then you're just like dreading that moment that your friend turns around and goes like, Petros's mum lets him do that. And
It's like,
"Don't
shut the fuck
fucking
up."
bring. Yeah, and you get that with Rocky when Paul is like, go speak to her, Rock. And he's like, I don't want to do it. I feel stupid talking to a door. He's like, I never talked to a door before. But before we get on to the second half of kind of how this film plays out, I feel we'd be like, it'd be dumb of us not to mention Tony Gazzo and his kind of stooge that he's always going on going about with, because like that guy, I just want to say right now, his kind of driver, fuck that guy.
Yeah, that guy's
He's
an
just
asshole.
like,
He's such an asshole. Yeah. Well, I've already name dropped Joe Spinell, Gazzo. So Joe Spinell, I mean, like, Jesus, what a legend. I always forget he's in this film as well. And
yeah,
like that's the thing, like when I said earlier about how this film could be so gritty and stuff, because like Joe Spinell, I mean, he was in like Maniac, like the lead of Maniac, and that's all right. So if you know Elijah Wood, he did a film a few years back called Maniac. Go check out the 70s version of it with Joe Spinell, and he's like, it's so gritty, it's it's terrifying, like just 70s, just horror, just gross, like New York. And he's so nice in this film. It's like, I'm just saying, like, if you think it's like this gritty 70s film, that guy could easily just like, he gives Rocky money and stuff, and it's just like, hey, go have a nice time, with that girl you're going out with, and then it's just like, he could very easily have just like come back and been collecting money or wanting to kill Rocky or something. It's like Rocky's like hanging out with some really suspect people, but somehow doesn't affect him. So
I feel like this film in the wrong hands, like written by somebody else, there's like a really crap B plot where like kind of he puts pressure on Rocky to like throw the fight for like a big payout. Like there's like a whole B plot of that that's just like really unnecessary, just to like unnecessarily ramp up the tension. Because as this film proves, by the time we get to the end, like, I'm not sure how you feel about it, but like, I don't give a fuck about the outcome of the fight. Like, it's when Rocky gives that speech and he's like, all I want to do is go the distance.
Yeah.
It's like nobody's ever gone the distance with Apollo Creed. It's like that. Well, that's all I fucking want, man. That's all I want for you, is for you to go the distance. And
I think that's the way that it's so beautifully done with this film, because they've set things up. Like I just joked about earlier, the broken nose thing, but they cleverly set that up as well earlier, about like no one's ever gone the distance with him, and that's all he really wants to do. And you've like literally, he's been browbeaten the entire film and like made to look like a joke in front of everyone, but all he wants to do is just to not be a joke. He wants to do what he loves to do, which is box. That's the only thing he really kind of knows. That's the only thing he seems to really be good at, is like being able to take some punishment and being able to deliver some back. And he's like, he's not even like the greatest boxer, but it's funny because like how Rocky is like one of the best boxers in film history. Like he's like he's the go-to name, like if you're thinking about movie boxers, but like he's just doesn't know how to keep his hands up. He doesn't have good coordination. He has to learn continuously throughout the whole series, but I think that's what makes this series and this film so important, is just like how he like is so determined, and he's like wants it so bad, and that's like adds up into that whole like thing of him being the ultimate underdog, and how important it is that like when you finally get to that moment, they've been building it up so nicely, like that it pays off so nicely, and like you said, you don't even care that he doesn't win.
Well, I think there's like it's not even a subtext to this film, it's the text of this film, that it's about the American dream, right? And that everybody has their chance, even if they lose the fight, like there is that thing that they can get up another day and like still strive to make something of themselves in America. And that is very much like, well, it's woven into it. It's like, as you said, like the fight happens on like the day, like the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. And it's like, and I think that's Apollo Creed's like kind of like big marketing strategy for it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the country was founded by an Italian. He's like, we need somebody of that lineage. Like you could just see the dollar signs rolling in his eyes.
Yeah.
what's going. But before we get to talking about like when things really start to ramp up and he starts to get training, just wanted to talk about two pivotal scenes really. One of them is that kind of when Rocky gets Adrian back to his apartment, like, like what do you? Like, I feel like we kind of need to talk about that because I feel like there is a reading of that scene, especially now from 2021 eyes, that like it could be problematic. What's your thoughts on that scene?
Yeah, man, that's what I've said a couple of times. I feel like you could go a weird way.
Hmm.
You know, this film could have gone some weird ways, but they didn't. But that scene in particular is a bit strange. I think it's just like it's everything about his apartment as well. And Rocky, like, you know, he's like a weird guy who, if you look at him some way, he can be creepy. But if you look at him another way, you can just see that he's almost just like a big nerd and as inexperienced as Adrian is. And he just doesn't, he's like out of his element, but he's handling it a different way than Adrian is. Like Adrian is like in a shell and she's like closed up and she's like like very timid and afraid of like opening herself up to people. But Rocky, like his defense mechanism is to talk, and like be a chatterbox because he doesn't know what else to do because he's like nervous. But that scene is really weird because I mean he's got like his mattress like just that he punches, but it's like it's just like bayonet stab through it, like keeping it on the wall. And it's like really creepy, this dingy apartment. It's really creepy. And like he just comes on her so strong, and it's just like, oh, it gets a bit sort of almost rapey. It's kind of strange. Like she's kind of saying no, she kind of wants to leave.
Well, there's like, yeah, I think it's that thing that like, I don't know, I almost like look at it like that's how he thinks like a guy should behave. I feel like he is just this kind of like inexperienced guy, and it's like,
yeah,
he doesn't really know what he's doing. Obviously, like there's stuff that looks like he's like pulling moves, but it's such a naivety to him. Like when he takes his top off, like it's in that vest, and he's like, it's really hot in here.
Yeah.
Like it's like it is that thing. Like it's like if someone's really smooth and knows what they're doing, it's like yeah, that's a creepy move. But for Rocky, from what we've seen of him up until that point, it's a bit. You kind of get this thing that like that is what like. Do you know what I mean? Like even the way like when she says like, "Oh, I need to call like home," and like he says, "I I haven't got a phone." She's like, kind of like, "Why?" And he's like, "Oh, people just kept calling it." He's like, I don't need that." And then he's like, "I'll call Paulie for you." Just like sticks his head out the window, and it kind of shows you how bleak his existence is. It's the fact that you look out of his window and there is just a brick wall. And it's like that is like that's like one of those things you see like I don't know like really dud properties like you get on a Vice article or something like that where it's like
I always
£1,500 a month for this flat that like over this onto a brick wall.
Yeah, I always like get the vibe that like there's like a good reason why his neighbors probably hate him. Like, you know, the people in the neighborhood are always, I mean, because this dude like literally is pulling moves, like shouting out windows to you know, in front of a girl, like is he thinks is funny or is impressing her or whatever. And then he's like having these fights with, you know, I'm sure we'll probably talk about Mickey and stuff and just shouting and punching. I mean, he probably talks to himself all the time. I'm sure he was probably like a very annoying neighbor.
Well, yeah, we get that first scene where he comes home from that fight and he's just in there talking to Cuff and Link, his turtles.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's probably doing that shit all the time, right? He's probably there going like, hey, you had a good day, I had a good fight, you should have been there, buddy. And it's like, they're probably thinking like, who the like, the guy in flat B is really fucking going to town, like just chatting some shit. And that's like, yeah, Lee, you set it up perfectly. Like that's the scene I really wanted to talk about was that scene when Mickey comes to see it. But I think that's a real pivotal moment in this film, right?
Yeah, again, it's someone who I think doesn't take Rocky seriously. I mean, they set that up really nicely as well, where Mickey, like, obviously, you know, tells him like, you know, you could have been great, but you wasted your time. doing this dirty work, because he's working for this bookie or mobster guy, and Mickey doesn't respect that, and Mickey obviously like sees so much promise and potential in Rocky. He himself a former boxer who never made it to the big match, and he always wanted the big match, and he's very much like I said, like a lot of these people who. It's funny, like watching this scene, like watching that film again and watching that scene where he comes up and he like has that really heartfelt moment where he's trying to open up to Rocky and explain all this stuff. And Rocky, fair, good on him to basically tell him to fuck off, because like he didn't want anything to do with him. And all he does is just come up when like the opportunity is right for him to be Rocky's manager. Rocky would have loved, he wanted him to be his manager for so many years, and he just didn't want anything to do with him. And then like, when the opportunity is right, like, Mickey's there. And it's funny how like important Mickey is to Rocky and how forgiving Rocky is, like how he just goes back outside after he's like just told him to fuck off basically, and like just cursing him and just talking about like how he was never there for him and screaming and punching his bag, like punching his mattress on his wall and just getting really pissed off and punching doors or whatever. He's just listening to it as he just walks out, and then he just like runs after him. And it's just kind of funny. Like I forget that it goes down that way, but it's just like that's just who Rocky is. He's like so nice and forgiving, and like just wants to. I don't know. I mean, he knows as well he needs to help, but it's like he's smart. He is smart in some respects.
That monologue he does, where he's like, "It stinks. Stinks. Why you come around here 10 years? It's because it stinks." That's improvised.
Oh wow.
Because like that apartment was actually filmed in LA.
Yeah.
Like the interior of that apartment.
Yeah.
And like it was like a flop house, and it actually did stink. So I think it was like part of Sylvester Stallone going like, and it's in keeping with what Rocky like would say, and it's kind of like it really fits well, and it's. A bit that kind of makes me laugh is when he like kind of storms off into the bathroom, and then like he thinks Mickey's left, but he's forgot his hat, and he kind of like comes out and like looks at him, then just like goes back into the bathroom, and it's like what's he kind of like? Is he just like kind of standing there behind the door with his arms crossed like a stroppy kid? And then obviously he has that monologue, and you kind of think, because it keeps cutting to Mickey on the stairs, and you think, oh yeah, he's probably like just listening to it, but then it like cuts back again, and Mickey's like actually outside the house now, and it's like he's actually given up. He's gone like, right, like, and I guess Rocky kind of thing is that thing like Mickey knows that he has fucked up, like he kind of all that time he could have been there, and like you get it early on, like he gives away his locker to somebody else who's actually the actor Stan Shaw, who turns around to him and he's like, "Hey Rocky, really like your locker," and like it's like kind of like a really early role for him, and I really do think you get a sense that Mickey knows he's fucked up, and Rocky's got that forgiving aspect to him where he's like, I'm good, like, oh, come back here, you old bastard. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm sorry. I don't know, I'm sorry, Mickey. I'm sorry. Which, kind of like brings us up to the point when things start to ramp up. Right, this when we get the like punctured by the line when Mickey says to Rocky, "You're gonna eat lightning and crab thunder," and then it's like, cue the Bill Conti score, because we're getting into a montage.
Yeah.
And so what things did you pick out of the? Did you pick out any things in the montage? What kind of things does Rocky do to prepare for this fight?
When does he start the eggs? The eggs. That's not during the montage, is it?
That's early.
Yeah, that's earlier. Yeah, like that's just him getting up. Yeah, there's a lot of running. So they do the interesting thing with him and like tying his feet together basically to like better his like foot coordination, and there's a lot of, but yeah, his main go-to is definitely cardio. You get some good punching bag, like some good stuff like that, like the speed bag.
You get the
yeah.
one-arm
One-arm
press-ups.
push-ups. Yeah. Yeah.
Which possibly has like given the best like clip ever is when like he finishes them and looks over
Oh
to
yeah, the
somebody off camera
sexy. Yeah.
and like just does a thumbs up, and I
Yeah.
think like it's available as a GIF if anybody wants
Yeah.
to use that, 'cause it's fantastic. And you kind of get that guy who's like unnamed who eventually is in his corner as well. He's like kind of throwing like a medicine ball to him. And
Oh,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And obviously Rocky's famous for his like unorthodox way of training, which is
Yeah.
punching the meat. And you get that in
Yeah.
there's that news like clip when again, like there is just moments of
many things.
brilliant humor in this when you got
Yeah.
Paulie just like poking his head into frame whilst they're
Yeah.
doing like the news interview and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and
But,
Goofy Rocky actually doesn't like he doesn't just like not he doesn't ignore it. He just like, oh, there's my friend Paulie back there. He lets me come in and hit the meat. Yeah. Oh man, this film, in just like this series in general, but like this film, I guess, started it, and it doesn't even have like the best montage of the Rocky series, obviously, but like it sets the standard for what a film montage, especially in the 80s, like would become like, or for like action films, or like I don't know, like these underdog stories and stuff, because obviously like John G. Alvidsen would go on to direct the Karate Kid series, which
Yeah.
is like
Rocky for kids.
yeah, epic. And yeah, he would use the montages in there, and I mean, of course, you would have like, you know, South Park and stuff, just like making fun of montages because of films like this. But like, it becomes like a joke of a thing. But this film really set the tone and the standard. I mean, obviously, we have like the Steadicam as well. Like
Yeah.
Rocky's running through with this. He's got his dog Butkus, which Adrian gifts him in this really sweet moment, which is actually his dog, right? Like he like.
Yeah.
I
was
read
gonna
he sold it, or was going to sell it, or did sell it, like because he was so
that's how-
broke.
Yeah, that's how broke he was. He couldn't afford to feed it, and it's kind of weird with animals with this film. So after the film finished, he just kept Cuff and Link, the turtles. He just
Nice.
like Sylvester Stallone owned them, and it's throughout this series. There's weird things that it's either stuff in real life that Rocky had, and he's like, I'm going to bring that into this, and I'll get into it in a lot of depth in the Rocky 4 episode. But like that robot, like,
Oh, yeah,
was
God.
really good for kids with autism, and one of Sylvester Stallone's kids had autism, so that
Oh wow.
he just wanted to promote that robot.
Oh, that's
Apparently
really
it's re-
sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
but then obviously like now wants to get rid of the robot in like apparently there's going to be like a 35-year Rocky 4 re-edit that he's been like that's been Sylvester Stallone's lockdown project, and it's like we're not going to get the beautiful love story of Paulie and his robot.
Oh, come on. That's you can't take that away from us. But yeah, no, I mean the dog though, and him running with the dog is like just a good shot, and like obviously we build up to him like getting up the stairs, no problem. Like I mean that's the epic sort of thing about this film. Like we've said already, it's like he can't do it at first, and then he finally gets it, and it's like, you know, he's ready and stuff. And we have that amazing like Steadicam with him running, and I think it was like they wanted the audience to feel like you're running with Rocky. You like when he's running along the river, and then he finally gets like to the steps of the art museum in Philadelphia, and he runs up. And yeah, it was 1976, so it was like the first year that film started to use the Steadicam. I guess the like year before, was it Bound for Glory? Was the first film that would use it. It was like created by Garrett Brown, who happened to live in Philly, so it was kind of like, you know, very like serendipitous that they would film in Philly and they could use it and stuff, and it's one of the first films to use it. And it's such a groundbreaking technique, like because they were just like,
Yeah.
yo, we're like on a, you know, following Rocky on a bus or something, or a car or truck or something, and like the camera would be bobbling, but like with the Steadicam, you know, it's just like so smooth, and you're just like running right with them. So it's really awesome scenes.
Once I knew that, like I kind of started looking at the film as to like what it was doing with the Steadicam, and there's that like there's just like really great shots, and I guess like I can only think of it like at the time what that would have been like for people to see this for the first time. I guess it would have been like when that first film of like train coming into the station where you're just like, whoa, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like because it's like we haven't kind of like been in with the characters, and yeah, Garrett Brown talks about how when you first go into the meat locker and the kind of camera is just weaving through these like slabs of meat. and
Yeah,
stuff
those
like
are
that.
really
And it's
cool.
like,
And Polly starts pushing them and stuff, and they're just
yeah.
like moving in front and stuff. That's a really like cool scene. Yeah.
And then you have like John G. Avildsen for like a lot of the other stuff was operating the camera himself, and there's like really interesting stuff. Like he was on the bonnet of the car when there's that scene of Rocky in Tony Gazzo's like car,
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
and he's in the back seat, and then there's that really beautiful thing when he goes into the pet shop at one point, and like the camera just kind of drifts away from them, but then like catches their reflection in a mirror, and he said
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
he wouldn't have ever got that shot if he wasn't operating the camera, because he's like, I just kind of like saw that there's this mirror and thought, well, let's try it, and like I feel like all that kind of stuff like adds to it, and it feels like everybody involved was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really into what they were doing, and
Yeah.
yeah, Garrett Brown with the Steadicam stuff is just like it's it's fantastic, and obviously would go on to just kind of like revolutionize cinema, like filmmaking.
Absolutely.
From
I
that,
mean,
from that day on.
once you have a piece of equipment like that and you give it to like people like Stanley Kubrick and then
Mhm.
Brian De Palma, I mean, like The Shining and Blowout are like films that are incredible examples of what you could do. And it's nice that like Rocky sort of was a film that sort of paved the way for the use of the Steadicam, and then you have those films that just show you exactly the kind of techniques that you can do when you have something like the Steadicam. It's like, yeah, it's a really really cool piece of equipment, and yeah, it just makes the film like just special as well. Like, I mean, like you said, it's just like everyone sort of had their like like they were really involved, really invested into this, and like when I was talking about earlier about like Alvidsen, like filming all this stuff on 8mm, like he's like filming it while they're like just rehearsing and stuff, and he
Yeah.
had all this footage, and it was able like in like Sylvester Stallone was saying like, oh yeah, if you like go back like to the ice skating rink, and they're just like on their date and stuff, like he like filmed all that, and it was all like almost mirrored the exact same shot that was with the actual 35mm cameras when they were actually filming the scene, because he was just like had them testing it and all that, like the rehearsals, and just like going around, and
Well,
he knew what he wanted, like, and then he would get it when he went to actually shoot it. So
well, that scene of them two going on a date originally was written to be a restaurant, and then got like rewritten because like I think John G. Avildsen said to Sylvester Stallone like, nobody wants to see two people sat at a dinner table in a film.
yeah,
And then it was kind of written to be like at an ice rink.
with a bunch of extras, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then,
like
then they
300
went,
people.
we got no budget for extras.
Yeah.
And then like, again, it's a lovely happy accident because like it brings out this like, you get that roguish charm of Rocky as well, that he's like there, like he's slightly disparaging to Adrian, but like kind of just to get what he wants, because he kind of says to the guy, "Hey man, she's sick. The doctor said she's got to get some exercise, get her out on the ice," and he's willing to like bribe his way, and I don't know, it plays very much to his like innocence and charm.
Yeah.
It's like he's there bartering with the guy as well. He's like,
Yeah,
$8, and the guy's like, no, $9 you got to do, and he's like, it's Thanksgiving.
yeah. I mean, Rocky kind of comes off like, I mean, we talked about this a little bit with the kind of weird scene. I mean, very weird scene in his apartment with Adrian. But
Yeah.
it's like, he's like a 14-year-old, and he's just like, he doesn't know
Yeah.
what to do. And this is another example of him like being out of his element. Like he's running with her because he's not going to skate, and he's just like, she's awkward, she's not talking much, so he's doing all the talking, but he's just talking about boxing and stuff, and she's like humbling him. She's like,
Yeah.
she's like, she's going along, but like, sorry, not humbling, humoring. She's humoring him. She's going along with it, and it's like it's a bit of a it's a funny scene, like it's like he's just talking nonsense about boxing, and he's like, oh, yeah, I do it because it's like, I like it, that's the thing I like to do, and she's just like, but why do you like boxing? Like it's just like it's just really funny. It's like two people who have so much and then so little in common. Like it's a really interesting dynamic.
It is that thing that they're just like they're two lost souls, like, and they kind of like have like drifted together, and it's like there's the like there's that great thing he says on that date as well when like he's telling her about like the kind of how the term southpaw came about.
Yeah.
And it's like it sounds like bullshit. He's like, so because he goes, it's like 200 years ago, is it Philly, I think, and a guy was he was fighting, and then he's left-handed, right, and his hand was facing Jersey, and that's south, right, and it's like it kind of goes on. It's like all the way through. I'm like, I don't, like how she's not thinking this guy is absolutely fucking winging it. So before we get to the big fight, there's I think again. There's really small scenes in this that really play to like that really tell you more about it than the bigger scenes. And one of them is like when he goes to the exhibition center to see how it looks the night before.
Yeah.
And he notices that like his shorts are wrong on the kind of painting they've done of him. And then in comes like the cigar chewing. It's almost like he is like the living version of Danny DeVito's character in Space Jam. Like
Jackhammer,
like
the Miles Juergens character.
Miles Juergen.
Yeah.
And he says something that's so biting to him, and he's like oh, you got the shorts wrong. It's I'm gonna be wearing white shorts with a red, and he says to him like, no, like it's not going to matter, and it's like even at that point it just it makes you realize like up until this point it's like for Rocky this is the American dream, and it's like it's almost like undercuts it because it's like even if you get to what you want to achieve, there's always like somebody else out there who thinks what you want to achieve is nothing essentially.
Yeah. Like he just like basically says, oh, it doesn't matter. And it's sort of like, like Rocky is continuously just a joke to these people. Like, for that guy, like, I guess he's sort of like, he doesn't care at all what's going on. He's probably like happy to that like Apollo Creed's kind of helped him come up with this idea to like give unknown a shot, and it's like the American dream, baby. And it's like it's cool. It's like cool. I'm making money. I sold the tickets. People are going to come out to this. It's a local Philly boy, Apollo Creed, the champion, and the way they sell it and the marketing and stuff, I'm sure is just like he's like, yeah, cool. I've got my money. I don't care. And he sees this guy and just like he doesn't respect him. He doesn't care. And it's similar, like another small little scene, like when Apollo Creed is, in his office and talking about, or he might be in the office with that guy and he's talking about like things and he's talking to his people, like his entourage about things he's going to do. Oh, he's got these like signings or like, he's got to talk to this person, do something with that person. And his manager is like looking at the TV screen, and then you get the footage of Rocky inside the meat locker, and he's just like beating the shit out of the meat, and he's just like, sorry, we had to get a beat the meat in at one point, right?
That's Tony Burton.
Yeah, Tony Burton. Boo boo, the boo boo box. Sorry, that's like my favorite thing. It's like Rocky films, and then he's like the boo boo box pirate and Hook. Boo boo.
There's that amazing thing that like Rocky is almost like the original Fast and the Furious, and how that franchise kind of like gets people who were once villains and like brings them on side, because like as we get later in the franchise, like by 3 you kind of get like Tony Burton is a part of like Rocky's team and
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah,
that. And like,
yeah.
he's the one person in this who kind of takes Rocky seriously from like the opposition side. 'Cause,
Yeah.
as you said in that scene, he kind of says to him like his eyes widen. He's like he's almost like Scatman Carruthers in The Shining
Yeah,
when he
yeah.
realizes shit's going
It's
down
like,
at the Overlook. He's like, yeah, he's like, boss,
Yeah.
you want to be paying attention to this guy? I don't think it's a joke for him.
Yeah.
And we get that when we get to the fight, right? Because in the first round, Apollo gets knocked down by Rocky,
which
and,
probably never happened to him before.
Mhm.
It's like, again, it's another like this film is such a story of evolving characters, like because everyone, like even to a degree, like Paulie a little bit, but like man, Apollo Creed, like they don't do much with him. Like I said earlier, he's not in it a ton, but like what he has to do
yeah,
from like being this guy, like he gets humbled tremendously by Rocky because he's probably getting easy fights. Because that becomes a bit of a thing with this series. Like managers are protecting people, like they're the champs and stuff, and you just get protected after a while. And like I'm sure that happens a lot in boxing, because it's very political and stuff, and who's going to get the opportunity to face the champion, and like he seems to have had his fair share of like just either easy fights or he's just very like gifted, and then all it takes is this one guy to be plucked from nowhere from his own. It's like his own fault. He brought this on himself. He
Yeah.
picked Rocky, and he picked the wrong person to like think he was going to run over. And it's like a very kind of interesting thing of him just not taking him serious. He doesn't even want to look. He doesn't care. You have that amazing shot like when they're in the dressing rooms, just like preparing, and Rocky's like got the nerves, but he's also like got the nerve of steel. He's like ready. He's getting ready, and like you can see his mind's racing. You have the setup to that, like you mentioned earlier, the scene where he's like going to the convention center, and he's like, he can't sleep. He just wants to like at least go the distance, and there's a lot on his mind. But then Apollo Creed, it's like it's so like just like methodical. It's like it's another day at the office for him. It's just like he's just like doing all of his prep, and he's not taking like he's just like, oh, this is another match, just another match.
Well, as Tony Burton's character says to him, he's like, he doesn't know it's a show. He thinks it's a goddamn fight, and it's like that's when you kind of get that realization from Apollo Creed that like, and what did he expect? You like. Somebody who's got nothing to lose has got everything to gain, so they're going to give it their all. And then like that's what Rocky does, and like he's kind of like it's weird. It's hard to kind of talk about a boxing match in a film on a podcast, because we could just go and then this person punches that person, but then like the film doesn't like bore you with it. It doesn't kind of play out the whole boxing match. You kind of get that like one of Apollo Creed's like women who's like got on his team, who's like the round announcer,
the ring girls,
dressed up as the Statue of Liberty, with like the Liberty card, and that kind of shows us that, and then like we get to the final round, and like they're both in their corners, and there's like some great exchanges where they're both saying to their team like, "Don't throw in the towel." Essentially, I don't. And what is it? Rocky says to Mickey, he's like, "If you throw in the towel, I'm gonna kill you." And it's like, and then like, Tony Burton's that guy, like, he's like, let's just get out of here. Like, let's just call the match here. And it's like, no, I'm not like, neither of them want to. Do it. And then,
because they like both like just like I don't know. I guess like it's the thing like where I said Apollo Creed wasn't taking it seriously, and then he starts to realize how fucking serious it was to Rocky, and like, and then also it's like he needed that. He needed like, and it just like sets up so nicely with the rest of the series and stuff. Like he needed Rocky. he needed competition. He needed someone who was going to push him to the distance. And because he is like this gifted athlete who's like the champion, and he's like, he needs someone to push him. But Rocky, on the other hand, finds his confidence, and he starts to realize, like, man, I can do this. I've knocked him down in the first round. I've knocked him down a couple of times in this match. I've taken the punches from him. I've like, he's a rock. He's built like a brick shit house. Like he just like he can like take the punishment, and then he gets his nose broken. Hey, yeah.
The thing is, by the end of this film, I would defy anyone to watch this and not kind of be like, the first time I properly watched it, and then again today, I was like stood up by the end of. Do you know what I mean? I was there like Tony Gazzo, when he's like, he said to him earlier on in the film, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna be at my fight?" He's like, ringside, like he's like, really like kind of cheat, like a game show host about it. And it's like that's how you feel, even if you're like, I can only imagine like what this would be like watching it in a cinema, and it's kind of like jumped up on my bucket list of like films to see, like any of the Rocky films. Just because like that experience, and it's no matter how many times you see it, it's like you just like you get pumped up, and it's this weird thing because I'm like really excited for it, and at the same time I'm just like burgeoning on tears.
Yeah, sure.
When it gets to the kind of like denouement of the whole film, and he kind of like does the whole like Adrian, and there's like she's running from the dressing room, and it's like cutting back between them, and then like it kind of like cuts to some comedy of like Bert Young, like Paulie getting like dragged out of the boxing ring. He's like, "Hey, that's my friend. That's my friend." The guy's like, "I don't care if it's your friend." He's like, "Oh, you gotta rip the salt." Like he kind of gets a little bit like Rodney Dangerfield. And then and like you get told that Apollo won on points or whatever, but like
it's so understated. Like
because it's kind of like Trojan horsed you into like going to the. It's almost like that thing to like to the guys just going, "It's a big sports movie," and then like, and it's like, well, it's not. It's a love story between these two people, and it's like, I know at the time a lot of the kind of studios and stuff like that didn't want to make this film so that women won't go watch a sports movie, women won't go watch a boxing movie, because obviously like it's the 70s, and they just like underestimated that women would find any enjoyment out of it. But it's like it's not that. It transcends a sports movie. It's like it's a film about, said, like the human spirit, the American dream, and love, like him and Adrian, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, because he like completely. Again, it's just like it's the camera work as well, and what they decide to focus on. Like I said, when they focused on his face when he's getting told that he's got that match, it just like zooms in on him. They do a similar sort of thing with this, where he's in the ring and like they're trying to talk to him, and he's like, "Oh no, like Adrian," he's just shouting for her, and like you hear in the background Apollo Creed's the winner, and like there's the ruckus going on in the ring, but it's like you just stay on Rocky's face, and it's just like him, and then you cut to Adrian running after him. She loses her hat. I love that he like even goes, what happened to your hat? It's like even in those moments, it's just like you make Rocky kind of a bit of a joke, but that is what he is. He's just like funny, like he's just a funny character like that. But yeah, it's just like it's a really sweet sort of ending, because it's like that's what he wanted to do, and she knows that's what he wanted to do, and she's like obviously so proud of him. Probably also very happy that he's not dead, because Jesus Christ, this man doesn't keep his hands up.
So at the time of watching this, these are all on Amazon Prime in the UK.
Yeah,
and like Amazon, like they do a thing at the end of this, and it's like, up next, Rocky 2, and it's just that thing of like, I was like, oh shit, I've really got to record with Jonathan soon, but at the same time, it's like, oh, that's so like, so tempting.
I'm so ready to like start watching them again, because like that's something I want to do. I guess we'll talk about a little bit, but franchise, like I want I want to go through the Rocky series. I want to do all these films. And also, like I said, my wife hasn't seen them all, and I've always just talked about how great most of them are. Most of them is Rocky 5, which is a bit, I don't know.
Yeah.
Tommy Gunn, come on, man. Yeah, it's fun. Sorry.
So we've talked all things Rocky. Now on to a little section I like to call Coppola Connections. Jonathan, could you find any weird connections between this film and another film in the Coppola family filmography?
I found a few.
Hit me
Okay,
with
so I
it.
wasn't really sure if you wanted to go like Coppola to Coppola, so I or if it just anyone from this film. So I had a couple. The first one I did was like Burt Young. So
Yep.
Burt Young's in this film as Paulie, but he was also in Once Upon a Time in America, which starred Robert De Niro, who was in Godfather Part 2, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Very easy, lightweight. Easy.
Perfect. One of the ones I've got is producer Irvin Winkler also produced 2011's Trespass, directed by Joel Schumacher and starring Nicolas
Ooh,
Cage.
there you go. Talia Shire was in I Heart Huckabees with her son Jason Schwartzman. Just throwing that in there because that's a connection itself. Which was directed by David O. Russell, who was also the director of The Silver Linings Playbook, which co-starred Robert De Niro, who was in Godfather Part 2, using the same one, directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
There is also another connection to David O. Russell as well. He directed Flirting with Disaster in 1995 that starred Nicolas Cage's then wife, Patricia Arquette.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's some other weird ones. So Bill Conti actually composed music for the Godfather game that came out on PlayStation 2.
Weird.
I'm not sure if you've ever played that.
Yeah, I think
Like,
I played it once and it was kind of weird.
Yeah, I got it right here,
nice.
baby.
There you go.
I guess the original Nina Costa or Neo Costa or whatever couldn't do it, and Carmine Coppola might have passed away by the time that they did the game. So Bill Conti picked up the slack and did some of the music for The Godfather. Another weird one is Stan Shaw, as I mentioned, the guy who shouts to Rocky and says, "Fetch for the laka," is in Snake Eyes, which also links to Brian De Palma, somebody who you mention all the time, amazingly, on the podcast Cinecast.
Yeah. That's the joke that won't die, and I'm trying to kill it, but it won't. It just keeps happening every time every time I'm doing research, he just appears somehow. So it's the ghost.
And somebody who obviously like took the Steadicam and ran with it, and especially in Snake Eyes, which kind of has that like 13 to 15 minute sequence. It's just like, let's just like see how long we can keep the Steadicam going, and that scene as well, like, because obviously it's a full stadium, and the way that worked is they obviously had extras for half the stadium, but what they did was, in the time it took them to like walk around like behind the scenes, they had like production crew and stuff like that getting all the extras to then like move to the other side. Like, go, like, because you've got 4 minutes before Nic Cage is walking out of this door, and we've got to make it look like that part of the stadium's filmed. Any more couple of
all right, I've got a couple more. Talia Shire in Rocky, directed by John G. Alvidsen, who directed The Karate Kid with Elizabeth Shue, who was in Leaving Las Vegas with Nic Cage. There you go. And then I got a really complicated one. It's 6 degrees of Coppola connections. Talia Shire was in a 1993 film called Chantilly Lace, which co-starred Martha Plimpton, who was in The Goonies, directed by Richard Donner, who also directed The Toy with Richard Pryor, who was in Lost Highway, directed by David Lynch, who directed Wild at Heart, starring Nicolas Cage.
Perfect. And Lost Highway also stars Patricia Arquette, who at that time was married to Nicolas Cage. Here's probably one of my more like I don't know, weirder ones. Sylvester Stallone directed Staying Alive, the sequel to Saturday Night Fever, which features music by David Shire, Talia Shire's then husband, which has a Rocky poster on the wall of Tony's room in that film, and was set to be directed by John G. Avildsen originally before he left the project, because he didn't like the kind of dark tone that the film took. Like he basically wanted to make Rocky at the disco, and John Travolta was like, nah, I want it to be about guys who take speed, are massively racist, and very flippant about rape. Like, and that's kind of the film we get.
Yeah.
Like,
God.
and then
I always forget that Sly Stallone directed that, and it's just always just like, what?
Well, yeah, he directed the sequel, like not the original. Yeah, it would have been weird if he had done Saturday Night Fever. Yeah. Amazing. Now on to a very arbitrary way of rating the film, and how would you? Well, what would be the perfect wine pairing for this film? Obviously, the Coppolas are synonymous with wine. What wine would you pair with this film, Jonathan?
Malbec, always Malbec, because Malbec's my favorite.
Perfect.
It's like, in my opinion, the best flavor of wine. Red wine, always red as well. It's got to go red. White you cook with, but I'm not drinking it. Too sweet.
This is very much a red wine film, because it's like it's quite dark, it's quite deep. It's got a lot to, like, I don't know, flavor notes. You've got a lot to kind of chew over. Like, there's a bit more like bite to a red wine as opposed to I assume a white wine, or like something a bit lighter. Whereas this film, like, it's got light touches to it, but it's got some substance.
Yeah, it's very great. Very good. Coppola's wine's not bad, by the way. I've tried it.
Yeah,
you know, I might be one of. I don't know how many people out there have tried Coppola's wine, because I don't know what the reach is on that thing. But you know, I've been in America; they have it there. Had it. It's good.
Well, there is like UK stockists, but it's like that thing of like, it's like £12 plus a bottle. So like, for me and the kind of times we're living in, it's like, oh, my birthday's coming up. Like, I might treat myself to a bottle. Like,
it's not cheap in America, to be honest. It's like it's a little bit more on the expensive end. And I've only had it a couple of times when it was like, I don't know, I guess it was like going off date or something at the grocery store I was working at, and it was really cheap. And I was like, all right, grab it, try it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like they it's a weird thing, because they kind of like, they give each different member, like, they've got their own like blend of wine. So there's like a Sophia like range of wines, and then there's like a Gia Coppola. So Roman and Sophia's late brother's daughters, like, she has a range of wines. And then like Roman Coppola does not have a range of wines, which really lets you know like who the like black sheep of that of their children is. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you haven't got an Oscar, you get no wine. Like, do you know what I mean?
Does Nick have one?
No,
range. His would be like white and red mixed together. Like, it'd be like just really nasty.
Well, his would be like Buckfast, like a tonic wine.
Oh yeah,
really high alcohol level, and just like, I don't know.
Neds are gonna have a great time with that out in Glasgow. Yeah.
For some reason, it's got like an aniseed flavor to it. Something really like really spicy. So how much are you paying for this? Are we kind of, if you're in a restaurant and this film. The wine pairing for this film, are you turning over the page? Are you going to the expensive stuff, or are we going off license wine with this?
Man, it's so like for me, I know where you're going with this, but man, wine prices are overrated. I've had so many solid bottles of wine that are only like $4.99, and my favorite wines, I know what they are, and I know where to get them at the good prices. And they're always, they might be at the bottom of the shelf, they might be on the bottom, they might not be up top. No one looks at the top, do they? Like, you know, they taste the ones I like they taste just as good as the ones that are on the middle, the $8 or $9 bottle ones. But who's actually buying 12? I don't even know what that tastes like. So, I'm not buying it from a restaurant because it's too
Too
expensive.
expensive. Yep.
And I'm being economical and smart about it. And I'm going to my I don't know, Tesco. I'm gonna get my favorite Côte de Rhone, or I'm gonna go to Co-op and I'm gonna get my favorite Argentine Malbec, because it deserves that.
Mm-hmm.
What I like, if that makes sense. But I know that But yeah, if I'm actually rating and I'm taking out my stupid opinions on wine that you guys don't care about, we're going top dollar. We're going for the nice Chianti or whatever, however you say that shit.
And onto the next question is: Would you recommend this? I think this is a surefire bet.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is like, you're an idiot if you you're me like a year ago, just going, oh, no, it's just dumb sport stuff.
Yeah.
Fuck me from a year ago. Like, that guy's an idiot.
No, like I said earlier, though, I can see it's easily done. It's easily done to write off these films because they are like parodied a lot, and they are like, and they also become a bit of a parody of themselves as they go along. Even though I still love the sequel, like Rocky IV is like, to me, it's just like brilliant piece of work. It's funny. It's like ridiculous, insane. Like, I can't believe they made it. I mean, like, Rocky is sitting there shooting himself. Oh, well, Rocky's like, I'm Mr. Clean and stuff, and then Drago's shooting himself up steroids. It's beautiful. Mwah. Chef's kiss. But I mean, this film is like incredible. It's one of the greatest films ever made. It's the greatest underdog story of all time. It's just hits all those notes. It's like well made. It's such a good story. You're gonna have a good time if you watch it. And like we've been saying, it's like, yeah, it's a boxing movie, but it's not a boxing movie. Like, it's
so much more.
So much more to it. So
perfect.
Give it a chance. Give it a chance.
Now on to which Coppola family member would you keep? You have to erase the filmographies of all the rest. Which one are you keeping, Jonathan?
All right, well, I wanted to ask you this because I was like getting confused when I'm looking at this. I'm trying to figure this out. So, like, we've already said, they're very incestuous, this family. So if I say I axe Francis Ford Coppola and I keep Talia Shire, do the Godfather films still exist because she's in them? How does this work? How does this work?
Right. So they still exist, but they're not directed by Francis Ford Coppola. So we're living in a very parallel. So I'm trying to guess who they would have.
I fucked your system up, man. I'm sorry.
No. I'm thinking we then get, it would have been directed, but I'm trying to think who was like, who else it was offered to. And it's Peter Bogdanovich. It's Peter Bogdanovich's Godfather instead. I think he was on the list. So yes, The Godfather does exist, and let's say The Godfather 2 was then that they had a change of heart and they actually let Martin Scorsese direct that one as well.
Okay. All right. Well, if you're allowing that, then I was being very tactical about it, because if I'm not allowed that, then I'll just be like, all right, well, I'll say Talia Shire so that I can get my Rocky films because they're really important to me and I love them as much as I love like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, and I think that those are like some incredible pieces of cinema. Like the Rocky films like are so important, were so important to me as a kid that I like would want to keep them. But I was being tactical about it. I was like, because I really like Jason Schwartzman as well, so I want a little bit of those like fun like films that he did with Wes Anderson and stuff. But I was like, what if you go Roman? If you keep Roman, you get The Godfather because he was in The Godfather. You get Apocalypse Now because he was in that. And then you get all the cool Wes Anderson films that he did. But then you also get Jack, which I think Jack is completely underrated. Fun film. He co-directed it with his father. Maybe he's just fully directed it. Who knows? But anyway, so Roman is the one you want to go with if you're going to be tactical. You want to get a bit of everything. There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, that
Sorry, I
kind of
overthought this.
unanswered. No, it's a slightly unanswerable question. It's all in the fun of it. But now on to are they the greatest film family of all time?
I'm gonna have to go with the Waynes. Damon and Marlon. No, sorry, sorry. No, yeah, God. I mean, it's a tough one because there's a lot of good ones. You got the like Barrymores as
The
well.
Arquettes.
You know, yeah, Arquettes. Yeah, you got the Marx Brothers. Like, even though they're all in the same films, but I love them. Yeah, but the Coppola family, it's incredible. Like, just what I was going through there, just to try to find a way to keep a lot of like the most of the best films that like make me happy and stuff that I've got a good connection with. Like, that just shows how like crazy that family is, and then just add the Nic Cage connection to it as well. It's just like, what?
They've got
like it's insane. It's a
they've
really
got all bases
incredible
covered
family.
for films. They've kind of got like schlock. They've got like high art. Like, there's like an argument that without Francis Ford Coppola and like kind of his influence, you possibly wouldn't have George Lucas doing what he did. And like, there is no Star Wars.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like, if it wasn't kind of like him seeing this kind of weedy little guy on set, 'cause I think he won like a competition at film school to like visit the Warner Brothers lot whilst Francis Ford Coppola was filming Finian's Rainbow, and like he kind of took him under his wing and then like pushed him into doing THX, and then produced American Graffiti, and like had this dream of Zoetrope where it's like, no, we want to do stuff like outside of the studio system, and probably like George Lucas probably wouldn't have been like, you can make like, we'll do Star Wars, but I want to keep the rights to like all the toys and stuff like that. Like, Jimmy, he wouldn't have been the behemoth that he became and stuff like that. So it's very crazy.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that about Coppola as well. I love Zoetrope, like, as an idea. Like, I know it didn't necessarily work. Sorry, my cat's tail is flicking. She just decided to jump up here. God, Steve, go away. But yeah, Zoetrope is so cool. It's like a really like, just I love that as an idea, just doing it yourself, man, like getting out of that system and stuff. And these guys, like, just used what they could and took advantage of what they could to create like some of the best cinema, like in that whole gang, and they were all friends. We've talked about De Palma. You got your De Palmas, you got your Spielberg, you got your Scorsese, like that whole crew, man. They're just like a wrecking crew going into Hollywood and just shaking things up and changing and just almost destroying the system as well. So like, they built it and then destroyed it. It's great. It's like the new Hollywood era is incredible. And like, the Coppola like connection to that wouldn't have been there without
The Godfather.
that.
Not going into it too much, obviously, like conscious about time, but he like The Godfather was like one of the first American films to have like wide distribution, like being on multiple screens at the same time. And I guess like obviously working in cinema, just that idea, just thinking about like how it used to be, like a film would like just kind of do the rounds as opposed to like, do you know what I mean? Like day and date of release, like everyone gets it. It'd be like, oh, you're in Wisconsin, you're getting this like 6 months after it actually comes out, or what do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because they used to do a lot of that roadshow sort of stuff. Sometimes they did it on purpose, but like, a lot of times that was all they had back in the day, and like, it's just unfathomable to think that
I think
like,
for its time,
such
like,
a wide release.
Well, like it was the largest amount of screens at one time, and it was something like 400 screens in the country. And if you kind of think of that like by today's numbers, it's like nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like when like a Marvel film comes out, it's like, well, just type, just like
crazy.
Any screen possible.
Everybody
do you know what I
has
mean? Like, amazing.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I must ask you, what does Bill Murray say to Scarlett Johansson at the end of Lost in Translation?
he told her that the briefcase in Pulp Fiction definitely contains the soul of Marcellus.
Perfect, Jonathan. That is possibly my favourite answer so far. So, where can people keep up to date with everything you're doing, whether it's with the Prince Charles Cinema, the Pod Charles Cinecast, Breadcrumbs, and franchises? Franchised, sorry.
Yeah, well, me personally, I'm at Tall for All, TALL, the number 4 ALL on Twitter, Instagram, and my band's page on Facebook because I play music sometimes, but not doing it now. But yeah, the Pod Charles Cinecast, it's the official podcast for the Prince Charles Cinema where I work. We talk about the cinema, the schedule, the program there, and the people who work there. But because it's in this weird forever pandemic world we're in now, it's just kind of turned into a fucking weird meta podcast where we just like are becoming part of the film. So like, we did Die Hard and Phil and I pretended we were in a podcast festival that got taken over by terrorists, and we talked about Die Hard during a terrorist hostage situation. So that's kind of that's become, and it's been really fun. It's not always that way, but sometimes we get pretty silly. And then Phil and I recently decided, along with Ariane, our former co-host of the podcast, to create this thing called the Breadcrumbs Collective, which is like Zoetrope. It's I want to do things outside of the systems. It's like it's hard to get people to take a chance on you as like someone who they want to work with, like editing their podcasts or whatever. Producing podcasts. So I was just like, well, I'll do it myself. I'll create my own network, which I don't want to call it a network. It's a family, because I want to treat it like a very DIY. We're doing it all together. So the Breadcrumbs Collective is basically just this network of our shows. So we got the Pod Charles Cinecast as a part of it. Phil and I started this weird show called Breadcrumbs, which is just like, it's just a weird anti-podcast. It's hard to even describe. There's weird stories that don't make sense. The editing's all strange. Like I have fake adverts in it because I'm just making fun of like podcasts that just have way too many ads that just don't really feel necessary. So it's a lot of weird stuff. Making fun of the election, making fun of Trump supporters. And just like weird news and just strange things. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and that's also spawned this new show called Franchised, where we're going to talk about myself, Phil, and Ariane, our favorite film franchises throughout history, and each season we're going to go through a new franchise, and every episode will be about the next film in that franchise. Some will be long, some will be short, but we're going to pilot it with our Fast and Furious series that we've been running on Patreon for the Pod Charles Cinecast. So coming hot out the gates with a big franchise. So yeah, I can't wait. So yeah, if you want to find out all that stuff, it's breadcrumbscollective.com or breadcrumbspod.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jonathan, and helping me join some of these dots and making some Coppola connections.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me again. It's been a blast being back on. And like I said at the get-go, man, like congrats on like the progress you've been finding yourself with this podcast. It's been nice to see your growth and stuff. So yeah, it's cool, man.
Ding, ding. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for being in my corner for this first round of the Rocky saga. And a massive thank you to Jonathan for inviting me to be a part of the Breadcrumbs Collective. If you'd like to find out a bit more about Breadcrumbs, head on over to breadcrumbscollective.com, where you'll find links to all the other podcasts, as well as all the episodes for this. You can find Caged In on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as Letterboxd, all under Caged In Pod. And if you'd like to send in a clip of your thoughts on any of the future episodes of this podcast, send them over to cagedinpod@gmail.com. gmail.com. As for next week's episode, I'll be joined by Katrin Lowe to talk about the 1977 disco classic Saturday Night Fever, which has additional music by David Shire. If you enjoyed this podcast, do be sure to rate, review on Acast, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. I've been Petros Patsilivas, your guide through the crazy world of the Coppola family tree. So do be sure to keep it Coppola, and I'll catch you next time.